You are listening to the Tough Decisions Network Tip of the Day.
Welcome to the Tough Decision Tip of the Day. Today, we are talking about money and making sure that when you start a business or when you go into a real estate deal, that you have enough money to be able to survive that business as well as that deal, especially in the beginning stages.
How exactly do you find or figure out how much money you need? That's always a big question. And I know in the businesses that we've started, it varies based on the business, obviously. But I know probably as a general rule, we could say we end up spending a little bit more than we thought we were going to need in the beginning. So,
and sometimes more than a little.
More than a little, exactly. So it's nice to be able to have that extra there so that you're not feeling the pinch, so to speak, and getting antsy about, okay, when are we going to start producing some money with this business and that kind of thing. So yeah, how much do you start with and how much are you going to need? There's no way to know for sure, I think, but having the extra is definitely important.
And there's no rule, like, okay, this is the formula to use in order to make the right decision. It's a tough decision because you don't really know. It's an arbitrary number, but you have to look at, historically, what have you seen and what have you done? And then moving forward, how should you try to mitigate the risk of, making sure you have enough money? And with business, when you're starting a new business or when you're in a business and you're trying to add something to the business, it's always a good idea to try to overestimate and be able to have extra cash when you're trying to get money into this instead of having to, not have enough money and you either have to close down or whatever. Because I would say, in most relationships, whether it be, your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whoever, or even just family people who have helped put up money, one of the biggest stressors in a business can be paying back your investors, whether that be a bank or whether that be your family or friends or whoever, that can be one of the biggest stresses in a person's life.
Right. And, I think we've gotten better at it as we've done it now multiple times. And there's the obvious step of sitting down and going, okay, what do we want to do with this business? Or what do we want to add to this business? And what do we foresee this costing? And how long is it going to take before the business itself is bringing in enough money to pay for that, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a really important step. But as you said, overestimating is also important. And we've been blessed and fortunate in that we've, for the most part, been able to start our businesses with our own capital. So we haven't had to go to mom or dad or, relative and ask for the money to start those. But I only imagine that our stress would have been, added to greatly had we owed a large sum of money to a family member or a close friend. And we have had a family member, help us get started on one level, but it was just a relatively small amount and we were able to pay that back relatively quickly. So definitely adding to the stress. And there's already, a little bit of stress as you're waiting for this business to start producing. Now, you're a little bit better at this than I am. I don't like to wait very long I want the business to be paying it for itself quickly. I would say you're a little bit better at looking at things long range and going, okay, we just gotta, we've got to make this work until, it can bring it in on its own. But yeah, definitely adds to the stress if you owe a large sum of money to a bank or to someone that you know.
Well, and in the space that we're in right now with, doing multifamily apartment syndications, through the Hanford Capital business, it takes the stress to a different level when you start to, think about bringing on multiple investors and multiple, people into a deal to fund it. And, one of the most important things that you can do with a multifamily syndicated deal where you're bringing on, 10, 20, 30 investors, or sometimes more, depending on the size of the deal, is to make sure that you raise enough capital for your capital expenses. There's those CapEx, expenses, because you never want to do a capital call. You never want to have to go back to your investors and say, hey, we underestimated, we need another $500,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is. That's never a good thing to do. It's very, very challenging. A lot of stress is involved with that. And so you want to make sure that you overestimate, because it's always better to give the money back when you realize you don't need all of it than to have to do that capital call.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. What I hear you saying is it's better to have too much and be able to return that to the investors maybe a little bit earlier than you thought than to get stuck going, oh man, I need some more money and have to go back to them. And I think they probably would prefer that too, to give a little bit more at the beginning and then, realize that, we overinvested a little bit, but now we're going to get it back.
Exactly. And one of the things that can also cost more money is when you're trying to do a build out on a particular office space, which we've done on multiple occasions, or of course in this multifamily apartment syndication space, trying to estimate the costs of renovating the units to increase the rents, but to increase the values. You have to get proper quotes and things like that. But I usually use the rule of thumb of adding at least 10% and sometimes more, depending on what your situation is in that particular deal or that particular business. But adding at least 10% on top of what your quotes are as that extra buffer when you're trying to calculate what those renovation costs might be or those build out costs for starting a new business.
Right. And the build out costs, you have to look at them a couple of different ways. And we've, again, been through this a couple of times. You want to make the space nice and you want to make it definitely efficient and good for your staff and for your customers or in our case, patients. But in our case, it's spaces that you don't own. So, you're not wanting to put tons of money into them. And then on the other side of that, with the multifamily, you're wanting to add value. So you want to make it look nice. You want to upgrade things, but your ultimate goal is to what? Make money. So you have to balance, the value add versus, making the money in the end. You want to be able to do both.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Tough Decisions Tip of the Day. This is going to be a daily tip that we're going to be able to provide to you. We're not going to be doing it every day, but we're going to try to do it as many times as we can to try to provide you some more information, some more tips on how to make tough decisions. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode on Tough Decisions Tip of the Day, phone calls and how to make tough phone calls to get them out of the way so you can move on. So thank you for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel on iTunes to listen in for more daily tips. Every day, we will be releasing a short 3 to 5 minute tip to help you make better decisions. Help us spread the word about the Tough Decisions podcast with your friends, and also take time right now to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, Facebook, or your favorite platform. You've been listening to the Tough Decisions Show.